Cool.
course. So, Joe, brother, I really appreciate you doing this, man. Thank you for coming on the show.
Absolutely. What's up, Glenn?
Hanging out, long day. Work started work pretty early. I don't know. How about you?
Can't complain. It's almost the weekend for me, so it's all good.
Nice. So, I've always found that I've been a fan of, and it's almost weird saying a fan of your work, because it seems to me like that's who you are and the way, and I know we'll get into it and how we've kind of met and how our paths crossed in life, but I've always been a fan of you and your perspective. And I find myself often talking to people using points of view that I've developed in the conversations I've had with you. So I'm extra excited, and I'm super grateful you're able to carve out time for this.
Yeah, man. Should be fun.
Awesome. So take me through then what kind of like your transition was like leading into high school graduation and post-secondary school. What kind of made that transition piece key for you?
I think for me, so I'm from the States. It's so high school for me, new university, ended up going to a small school out in Illinois. Had family ties to it, but wasn't the best student, but I got good scholarship money. So it was a good opportunity for me to go and kind of start fresh somewhere. I had some family ties to the university, but there was only a handful of folks I knew. And coming in, I decided in high school, I was a bit quieter, more reserved, at least in the early years, and then kind of found my footing being social and being able to kind of talk with people. So going into university, I wanted to completely redefine myself. Kind of found my niche getting involved with student government in university, and kind of carried that through all 4 years, as well as some other kind of extracurriculars. But that was kind of my transition out of high school. Was I knew I had the opportunity to start fresh and have, maybe people who didn't know me, and kind of took full advantage of that opportunity. And I think I made the most of it for the most part.
Nice. What made you choose to go into the post-secondary program that you did, which was a business, right? Business leadership, something along those?
So I doubled up. I ended up getting a dual degree in computer science.
Right.
In high school, I had involvement with computer repair and networking. I went to a VOTech school that had classes that I would take. I always had a penchant for technology and computers. So coming to my undergrad, it was information systems, which turned into an internship. And I didn't quite love that during that internship, and then came back to university and said, well, I'll do computer science. This programming thing is interesting to me. From there, kind of stumbled to a business minor, did the math, and figured out if I kind of crammed in some extra classes, I could get a double major in computer science and business. So that's what I ended up doing.
Yeah. Interesting. When did you so we met in 2018, kind of midway through it. How were you able to transition into that role? Like, take me through that process, please. About what that was like. How you
so
big jump.
Yeah, it was a big jump. I graduated uni in 2013, relocated to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I'm actually at right now. Had a great job working for a great company right out of school. But I reached a point around 2017 where I had never studied abroad or lived abroad. And for me, I had two big trips in 2015 and 16, where I went to Kenya, as well as I went to Ecuador, and kind of opened my eyes to the experience of living abroad or going abroad. I never studied abroad in university. I had a big desire for that. Had the privilege of saving up and kind of positioned myself well to be able to leave a job that was very comfortable and treated me well, to go and try something different. Long-winded way of saying, by the time I met you in 2018, I was about 6 months into living in South America, full time for the most part, working with the nonprofit social enterprise, and that's kind of when our paths had crossed.
Nice. How did you get involved with Me to We? What was that? What was that whole transition like? And who, like, did anybody kind of guide you in that direction or mold you to be a facilitator?
Yeah, my best friend Ryan, who had worked for the organization since 2012, kind of connected me. He's who I visited when I went to Kenya and Ecuador, and actually was able to see the projects myself and get exposed to what they did. So when I was living in Colombia at the time, and kind of got the connection to go do some training in Ecuador in order to be a facilitator and do trips there. So.
What was the biggest challenge you faced in that transitional period?
Good question. I think from a challenge perspective, it was getting comfortable with maybe not knowing.
Yeah.
I'll explain what I don't know, right? Because when I was saying to friends and family, like, yeah, I'm going to go and live in South America and do some volunteer work and just try to do something different. I didn't have necessarily a plan. I knew what I wanted to learn and accomplish, and I kind of centered that around the Spanish language, learning it to the best of my ability, and so the challenge was trying to kind of make sense of it to myself, even though I didn't know, but like that was what I was most comfortable. Yeah, I don't know, but I'll figure it out and go from there. So
Awesome. You seem pretty prepared for the everyday challenges. How much know-how beforehand of what you were getting into were you aware of?
In what sense? Like when I was living abroad, or
Yeah,
in general?
just kind of the living abroad process. Like, how prepared were you for what you're going into? You feel like looking back on it now.
Yeah, nothing was too. You're gonna have culture shock to a certain extent, but you can't let that like paralyze you. Kind of, you have to keep it. I kind of not leveraged it, but if there was something that I felt uncomfortable with, I would definitely reflect on it and be like, okay, why does that make me feel uncomfortable? And like, what should it make me feel uncomfortable? Right? It's like, okay, because someone has different cultural values or different, they might cook their food a different way or do something different. Like, it's like, well, imagine if someone was in the US or in Canada and they were experiencing something like the weird things we do. Like, what's the first time someone experienced poutine, or, the big pizza in Chicago or something, or, there's all those little things that I think I tried not to let it phase me, I guess, but I didn't ignore it. I didn't, it's not ignoring it. It's more embracing it and letting it kind of be a learning experience was definitely my approach for the most part. Yeah.
Do you have a least favorite experience working abroad? Not so much traveling abroad, because we'll get into that, but I really want to focus on kind of what your challenges were and your like favorite experiences from working specifically abroad.
Yeah.
So what was like the biggest like least favorite moment?
Yeah, least favorite,
or even a challenge about it.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to think negative
Yeah, I
about it.
think no, I think it's a fair question. I think for me, a lot of the experiences I tried to have, or um, the time I spent, I tried to be pretty intentional with it. And one of the kind of tenets that I stuck with for the most part was trying to be either with passionate people or helping passionate people. So on the positive side, there was a Spanish school I loved that I spent a lot of time with, that I was able to help them with their, website marketing. And that was awesome. but one of my learnings, and it wasn't, it wasn't a necessarily bad experience, but it definitely wasn't the best. I ended up spending a month in Cali, Colombia, which is a beautiful, it's the salsa capital of the world, in southern, kind of the south of Colombia.
Yeah.
Not necessarily but and the guy that I was helping kind of with marketing and content creation stuff, he was very passionate, which was like, I could see his passion, but he was also a bit of a jerk. He was an asshole that I just, my learning was
Oh
like,
no.
you want to be with passionate people, but you want to be with people who have humility and aren't dicks. So that was definitely something that I had to readjust my expectations, readjust.
Well,
Be passionate, but you got to be a decent human being. So that was definitely, I mean, I still had a blast and really enjoyed my time, but he definitely didn't help the experience at all.
right. Oof. Yeah, that's got to be frustrating. I found that happens not so often, but there are moments where when you're traveling anywhere and you encounter somebody, or I find like your experience sounds like a little, like not so much as little of a piece as the one I'm about to give an example of. But I'm in Croatia and I go to ask somebody at the bar if I can just plug in my charger, right, to charge my phone for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy's like, "Are you buying anything?" I was like, "Well, not yet. Like I might be." And he's like, "You don't buy anything, you don't charge your phone." And I was like, "See ya." I go somewhere else, and then some other bar on the beach in Split let me use their phone charger at the bar. But yeah, little things like that don't necessarily ruin the trip, but they're like little pieces of the day that's like, man, you're on a beach working at a bar. I'm sure there are worse places you could be, and you choose to be rude. I don't know. It's not the greatest feeling, but it's cool that you still were doing, like, you still had somebody passionate you were working with despite their attitude towards it.
Yeah.
So what was then your favorite experience working overseas, or sorry, abroad?
Yeah.
Like an experience that sticks out to you?
Yeah, I think for me, it kind of is the flip side of that story I just told, where the in my intention to like learn, I ended up going and spending my first kind of 30 days at a Spanish school. So in a small town of Colombia called San Carlos. And
Wow.
I had the intention to learn, so I'd go and I ended up, it was a workaway. That's a platform where you can kind of exchange whatever services or volunteer work for food and board, which is nice.
Workaway?
And Workaway, it's workaway.info. Yeah, I highly recommend it as a tool and a almost community as well for connecting with opportunities that are volunteer specific, but allow you to whether extend your travels or really connect with people. It's a great, highly recommend it. But
That's cool.
Yeah, so in San Carlos, the Spanish school, Danielle and Camilo, they're two Colombians who in 2016 had left, kind of working in Medellin, the bigger city there, and went to go start their own Spanish school. And in they're in one of them's hometown, and their passion for the language, but also just the amount of fun that and the authenticity that the experience that they created, where you're learning Spanish, you're spending a couple hours a day doing Spanish, doing homework, conversing in the town, but then the town is surrounded by nature. So in the afternoons every day we'd go and hike to a waterfall, swim in the river, go canyoning, big hike. It was really incredible experience that I started the trip there. I did 30 days, and then I went back to Colombia and to visit there, I think 4 more times. So spent about 10 weeks total visiting and just really embracing and falling in love with that part of the country.
Wow. At what point living abroad into that, did you make the jump to be a facilitator? Was it like a year in, or you were living there for a couple months, you decided, or you went there specifically?
No, so it ended up being about a month in. So I
Oh,
had the
wow.
month at Spanish school and kind of knew I would have the intention of, I was in Colombia. I was okay. I'll make my way either north or south. I was kind of figuring out as I went. Um, and that's when this was late 2017, in December of that year, ended up going to Quito and doing the training to be a facilitator in Ecuador. So that was pretty quick turnaround from there. So I had the training there. Then I actually went home back to the States for Christmas time, and did another type of training. I did a yoga teacher training
Oh
for
yeah,
a
cool.
month. I think when on your trip, I think we probably did a couple classes.
I remember doing
Um,
one almost, if we didn't have an activity like Wayusa in the morning, then
yeah,
yeah,
yoga.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
yoga. I think I did
yeah,
4 of them, but there was an
yeah,
activity
definitely
like all
several.
day. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, cool. So it was right away, and you took, was half of the taking Spanish lessons. Sorry, was that with the intent of trying to, you wanted to learn it, obviously, but that you were able to use that quite a bit, it seemed like, when you were a facilitator.
Yeah, I mean that makes whether you're traveling or having a cultural experience or
Mhm.
speaking the language, the attempt to like you don't need to be like people really appreciate that
Mhm.
for it. Uh, so that was uh, really just to learn as much as possible, and I think with the work I was doing, I could use it 30% of the time. But I didn't. For me, I think a big piece that I wanted to make sure I didn't do was like to step on the toes of the co-facilitators or the jungle guides we were with, right? Where I want to make sure that my role as a facilitator, who's not from the kind
Yeah.
to is to raise up and make sure that the Ecuadorians, the folks that you're meeting, like their voice is heard and not mine.
Mhm.
So I think you probably heard me speak some Spanish, but a lot of it is me trying to sit back as much as possible and
Yeah.
uh, take it all in myself as well.
Right. What was the training like?
Yeah. So for the facilitation training, a lot of situational things. With with that program, there's a lot of middle school, high school age students. So ensuring you can handle um, everything that goes with interacting with teenagers. And I think having been a teenager myself at one point and understanding aspects of both the good and the bad, and
Mhm.
how things that dynamic,
Yeah.
covering that and making sure you can have and address drama, address tough situations, you know
Trauma.
because
Yeah.
when people are coming on and having an experience like that, you it's a lot of people's first time abroad, so you want to make sure they're comfortable as well as
Mhm.
comfortable but challenged, right? Like
Right.
that's what I tried to make sure people felt.
Yeah, I see that in a cool way of that. To your point, that was my first time abroad. I'd been to Cuba as a vacation with the family when I was younger, but I don't count that as in a comparison way form of how intense that was. And I'll be honest, there were times where like you're overtired, we're overworked. Like, but sometimes, like if it's, we don't really control the weather, so it's like 39 degrees, 1,000% humidity, pouring rain, might I add,
Hmm.
all the time, and then I'm exhausted. Like we're all tired, emotions are high. So I look back and I think to moments that, like, of conversations I had with people, and there are a couple examples where we had conversations, and I think it could have been either, it was honestly, it was probably the way I received what you were saying, and I was like exhausted, and I was like, I left the conversation being like, that Joe guy, man, like, damn it. And then looking back on it weeks later, I was like, man, I was exhausted. I didn't understand half of what he was saying. Like, my bad. But yeah, it's definitely, it can be very overwhelming, the experience of it. So it's cool that that's what they train you
Yeah.
for.
For you, yeah, for you thinking back for yourself, I mean, what was your, I think I probably asked you this question during the trip, but like, remind me of why you wanted to do the Ecuador trip and what was
Mhm.
your original connection to it back then? Because you were, what year in uni were you at that point?
I was done.
You
Like I was gonna
were,
graduate and then go.
that's right.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
that was on my
Yeah.
swan song. And I think the reason why, would you prefer like a genuine answer of why I did it now, or what I think it was?
Do both. I think that's a
Okay,
good reflection.
sweet. So why I think, what I think it was I think it was a desire to do something completely and absurdly out of my element. At the time, I had been in such a crazy high pressure program that required a lot of my time, energy, emotions, and like emotional investment, the whole nine. And then working long days and stuff in school. And then I had wanted to travel. I'd always wanted to. And then I was trying to find a way that I could work for a semester or study abroad. And then I came across the trips, and then I figure with the timing of my school I couldn't get away for a week or 10 days, and I also didn't feel, sorry, not 10 days, a week or 5 days, and I didn't feel 5 days was enough to get it. Like we were there for what, about
Mhm.
2 weeks. I feel at that as a minimum. I think that was a perfect minimum. It was reasonably priced per day, and it was so much further out of my element than the other kind of options that I was looking at. And I
Mhm.
don't know at the time what clicked, but it was it was something about the building. I'm in like building construction and property management and architecture, so that was something that I also wanted to keep that and like see how it was done in another country and how other cultures did it, and especially how
Yep.
they did it without all the crazy power tools that I have nowadays on
Yep.
site. So seeing
Yeah.
it and mixing cement with shovels on the ground and then pour, it's a lot of work, man. It's a lot
Yeah.
of work.
I'm remembering the conversation. Yes. When you had mentioned that and
Yeah.
discussed your major and what you were going to go into. So,
Mhm.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good reminder of that.
Yeah.
And
And
then
now
the like the reflection now, what's the,
I think looking back on it now, I believe fully that I did it out of a drive to create and learn, create a more independent and confident my like in myself. And I think that was something that was super, super awesome to do and take a big step forward into that transition period of I just finished college now. It's like now all my decisions are more on me. I felt college, they were always a little bit streamlined by other people's visions of what they
Mhm.
wanted me to do. But excuse me, but that was the first time where I took full control over a situation of something I wanted to do that was big, like a big picture thing. And I was like, hey, I want to do this. I want to help out. I want to do everything I can in my physical power to benefit the community for the length of time that I was there. And I also knew, as emotionally draining as it was for me, I like to believe that I got the most out of it, whereas there's not a thing, and you could probably attest to this or correct me if I'm wrong. There wasn't something that I kind of half went in on. It was everything. I was like, okay, I'm gonna focus on everything Joe's saying, Lili's saying, Rox is saying. I'm like, I'm gonna listen to everything they're saying, try to formulate my thoughts, and every activity,
Mhm.
every game, every time the locals beat the crap out of us in soccer,
Mhm.
we completely outnumbered them and everything. They still demoed us, like all those things. It was like there's no like halfway about it. And I think that was something that I also wanted to do, was just, hey, there's something that I want to do. There's something I want to try. I can get a lot of benefit out of this if I fully commit. Whereas if I'm like, man, maybe, or showing up once a week to meeting or once a month to meetings instead of like it's all the time, never miss a meeting, never miss an activity, never not pour it all in. And I thought that was something that I could see such a big benefit out of
Hmm.
if I went in all the way
Yeah.
and just put like bit down on the mouthpiece and was like, I'm gonna see what I can get out of this, right? Because you get out what you put in, and I think that was said quite a bit. And I think you could either go in half and like, well, maybe I'll wake up for certain morning activities, and it's like, no, like we're here, not missing a damn thing, no
Yeah.
regrets. And that's how I like to travel now. That's how I like to live every day. It's like no regrets, baby. Like, let's go. So
Yeah.
that's how I think it is. I think it's similar, but I like using what I've learned, especially
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
the service trip to Ecuador. And I think that was probably arguably the most humbling experience I've ever been through. So
Yeah.
I'm
No,
grateful for it.
yeah, it's good to, I had been on trips myself, and I think it's different for everyone, which is, I think, an important thing that you have to realize, where like you could get a lot out of it and some other folks, might not externally express it as much, but like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think you definitely have the right mindset, both while you were there, well, before, while you were there, and then after,
Mhm.
to make the most of it. So that's encouraging for me to hear. And it's exciting just to know that,
The either at the end was probably in up there, but the one that sticks out to me was by far the one where you had to separate after you're going to read something to us. You're like, okay, you go on this side of the room or this side of the room. And just the whole reason of why we were doing it. And then the possibilities and how invested I think this is my favorite part, how invested everybody was in
mhm,
the topics. You're like, all right, pick 3 people to discuss on why they should switch sides. And I was just like, oh, this is so much fun. But it was so like empowering. And it was
mhm,
very, very also to me humbling to see that people still respected it's like me saying, I understand what you're saying. I just don't agree with you.
yeah,
It's a very, very level-headed like decision making process that I really enjoyed.
yeah. No, I really enjoyed seeing that from pretty much all the groups I had, whether it was middle school age to university, or even kind of, adult groups. Like, it didn't matter, who it was. Everyone kind of got out what they put in, and
Hmm.
uh, definitely challenged folks to think about things in a different way, but also listen. I think that's the biggest piece that,
Yeah.
people don't realize, is you have to listen. You can't make a conversation without listening. So yeah.
And I think that's something that I found has developed through just as like many skills through doing this show. But I think that's one of the main ones that kind of blossomed on the listening one workshop that I've kind of taken and developed, where I saw this
Hmm.
quote way back when, and it said, the problem with communication in our society nowadays is people listen to respond, but they don't listen to understand
Hmm.
or like listen to learn. And there's a very, very level headed place that you need to be going to in order to like, I'm hearing what you're saying, and but then that trains your brain. And that, like you said, it's a skill that's developed instead of like, oh, he's done talking, my turn. And it's like, I don't actually hear what you said. So whatever I regurgitate isn't going to be informative, educational, good. It's not going to contribute to the conversation at all. And I think that workshop I've done quite a few times I worked at an outdoor center after the after Meetawee and the trip we went on to Ecuador. And doing that, I like first thing with every group that I had, it was like a university group who did like 2 days, and I just kind of wanted to see where their head was at. And I think my expectations were higher, but than what actually came to fruition in the moments with them. But I
Hmm.
think they understood the point. But everybody gets very, very like, why is he doing this? What's
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah.
They almost want to know why we're doing it before we do the activity,
Hmm.
instead of, it's like, no, you don't understand the leadership building process. You need to reflect on it after. If you
Yeah.
know we're not going to do this, I'm just going to tell you. But it's not as fun. The point's not. the point's not getting across as well. But that was probably my favorite one, and the one that I learned a lot from and stood out the most to me in those. So that was
Nice.
that was a blast for sure. Now, within that, did you find anything challenging about dealing with a group that was a bit more out of your element in terms of adults or young adults, kind of some year or two younger, your age maybe, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's a good question. I think for me at that point, it was about honestly, even at that point, about 3 months into into the role and facilitating. Your trip was the first university trip that I did. So it was, definitely a lot of firsts.
Mhm.
As far as like being out of my element or dealing with, I think a big part of like why you're able to be comfortable in a situation like that to a certain extent is kind of the support, right? You had a co-facilitator, someone that was there kind of sharing the load, right? It's, the
Mhm.
oxen, right? You're sharing the load to pull ahead, and having that, a team that supported and was there to like, have the conversations about like situations. So I think
Okay, nice.
that was a super important piece of how uh what I really appreciated, how we did things, and how the people that I worked with were all stand up folks that
Mhm.
uh, I knew I could trust. So I'm trying to think if there's like a good story of like a situation or something that was uncomfortable or out there, but not really, nothing crazy.
This is a good
You're
thing.
dealing with, yeah, me preaching and yelling about drinking water and staying hydrated, and um, I think
Yeah.
that was like you are dealing with extreme environments. I think you said 39 degrees, which in Celsius, it's 100 degrees, or in Fahrenheit, it's 100 degrees. So it is
Yeah.
completely not comfortable, and
Nope.
dealing with the health issues there. That's definitely a tough part. Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
it was interesting because there were 10 of us, and I was the only male on the trip. And that I think was very, very, I was kind of drawn to people of a similar personality or mentality of mine in terms of like mindset towards the trip. And so I was fortunate enough that there were like people on the trip with like a same mindset. Everybody had the same approach. They had the same like mindset. They had the same like Rox is very, very, very phenomenal at conveying a like very, very like stand back, kind of like almost not, this might sound bad, like puppet master style of leadership where she just gives such a great example and really projects what she wants and what her expectations are of us as a group. And then we almost never want to let her down. And I think that was something that thankfully all of us went at the trip with. And I
hmm
think that's what helped that dynamic. But I also think that's why I drew close to like you, to Fabio. And it was like, I was like, yo, dudes, this is crazy. I haven't seen you guys in forever.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, no, it definitely, you being the only guy, if that wasn't necessarily not normal, like in general, the trips would skew heavily female. And
Interesting.
yeah, I think I mean, in general, I would say it was at least 70-30, right? Like,
Wow.
like for the, yeah, female, male. Um,
Wonder why.
and yeah, and I couldn't really speak exactly to it, but
Mhm.
you could make some like generalized assumptions. But I think at the end of the day, like, you being there, and yeah, I think we had that talk where it's like, yeah, like, let me know, man. Like, we'll
Yeah.
talk about whatever. And if there's ever a situation like that, that's just like, yeah, bros,
Yeah.
bros being bros, I guess, kind of.
That's
I
it.
don't know. It's kind of silly to say, but
That's legit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think in general too, the social justice, or more so like just involvement with issues at that level, or I think there is a opportunity for everyone to get involved, one, but then also really for guys to step up and put the video games down, or the turn the sports off for a minute and like
Yeah.
think about some of the bigger things, or leverage those things and do something with them, right? And either way,
Hmm.
because athletes or people have an opportunity to share as well. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. That, and yeah, that's always fascinated me. And I don't know if it's something that I was just nurtured to want to pursue, or it was just something that caught my eye and then I just wanted to see it through, or that's just who I am and how I was raised and all that good stuff. But I think there's something to say about trips like that, and what I or like other men who are more surrounded by a female perspective and a mindset. It was very, very, there were a lot of things that I knew if it was like all guys, it'd be a very different approach. But I also know, or maybe I could be wrong with this, is like the conversations were at a different, like they were very, 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 they're so emotionally aware and intelligent, years beyond me. Even me now and them back then, emotionally way ahead. And that was something that I was like, this is fascinating. How you guys are so aware of how you feel and you're okay expressing it.
Yeah.
This is such a new concept to me. So
Yeah.
yeah, learning that was kind of, it was weird. It was weird, but it made me so fascinated with wanting to know more about them and what they're no regrets. It's super cool. It was super fun. So I love them all and I have like the
Definitely.
utmost respect for them. So it was cool to see you as like a role model in that space, but also guiding it from like a step back leadership point. So that was pretty cool to see. So yeah, awesome. So
Yes.
what was your overall experience just as of like within the last year or so with like Meadowy, and because with what was going on with them in the big news, what was your experience like, from what's your perspective on that, and why do you think that was such a big deal?
Yeah. I guess so. I had left the organization. I mean, just I knew I was going to come back stateside at the end of 2019. So had that. I think for me, one being from the States, like I don't understand Canadian politics, right? And we have enough things that happen on our side of things, but I think just in general, it's personal for me, right? Like it's my best friends. It's the people that I had just incredible experiences with, and
Yeah.
it's tough how like we talked about, like an experience that we had that was so real that like
Hmm.
to see it, how it was kind of brought down truly in a way, um, and I don't know if that's Canadian politics or what the deal was with that. But I think, in the grand scheme of things, the space of international development, the space of charity, like there absolutely needs to be oversight and uh, like criticism, right?
Hmm.
Because there's no right way to do development. There's no
Right.
right. But
Hmm.
I think a lot of criticism, or a lot of the things that like I don't even understand, like I don't know, it feels kind of personal just from like the friends that had lost their jobs and
Yeah.
really were impacted because I know the work that they do and still do
Hmm.
abroad is good. But yeah, I don't really know. It's something that, um, yeah, Canadian politics, I don't quite understand still, but yeah,
Me neither. Me neither, man. You're preaching to the choir there. Not
yeah, yeah.
not too diverse in Canadian politics. And like I think I am, and then I hear somebody's leaving office for whatever. I'm like, all right, enough of this. Shut it off. I got it. Like when it comes to certain things that affects me, then I'll cross that bridge. But
Yeah.
more so around voting time, it's like whoever impacts my industry in the best ways, get my tick. It's not
Hmm.
really much of a, I don't need to watch the news every day to figure it out. Plus,
Yeah.
yeah, lives are busy. But so, Joe, every time I saw you, you have these very, very and I've seen nobody else wear them except you, and you're a big ambassador, we'll say, for Snapchat sunglasses known as spectacles, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could say that.
so
Um,
so
yeah,
every time I saw you, you were shooting videos, and you'd be like this, and I'm for the longest time I didn't know. And then I heard a rumor that you had cameras, a video camera and a photo camera in the glasses.
yeah. Yeah, so I guess you're right. I'm one of the only people that really use them. They weren't marketed super well by the company,
Yeah.
by Snapchat, but I kind of stumbled into them. It would have been early 2017, and had them on hand. Actually, I have them right here.
Yes.
Just because,
Let's
yeah.
go.
Uh, so,
Unreal.
um, and yeah, for the I'll describe them. So they have one camera in them. It's a 105-degree. I look ridiculous. 105-degree camera on one side where it captures about the equivalent of the human eye.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, they're on your face at your eye level. So the video is about the same as a human eye from a quality perspective. It's it's a small camera, but yeah. And during my time abroad, I kind of fell into trying to, well, it was one of those things that I kind of learned and discovered along the way, and kind of have created a bit of a narrative to it. But just the ability to keep my phone away and not have to worry about missing moments,
Yeah.
right, in two ways, right? Like if I have to take the time to get my camera out or my phone out, I did have a nice camera that I had, but the time to get those out if I'm already not ready, could miss the moment. And yeah, to just click the button and like really intentionally just watch it and capture whatever was going on, really helped shape both. I think for your trip, as well as a lot of the other trips I facilitated, I put together I think I checked yours was like an 8-minute highlight video
Sick.
of moments and things that you might not, whether it's the work on the work site or the water walk or different activities where you did have your hands full. And right, like and part of one of the things that what I liked about the Meet was people keeping their phones away and not being obtrusive, and still allowing you guys to have a memory that you can look back on those 10 days and jump into day 4 and remember exactly what you were doing when, who you meet, the names, the faces. Helped, it was something that I could give back to folks, right? Like you guys will have that forever, and can remember those moments. You should like edit in some footage while I'm talking about like your experience while this is
I
happening.
will.
It'd be work for you, but I think it'll be fun. Like, so, whether it's
fine.
yeah.
I love that kind
So
of
yeah,
thing.
that was when I was on trip and spending time working with groups. That was kind of something I did. But yeah.
So I was gonna transition that to is that and if not, what inspired See Where Joe Goes? Because I love that series. It is probably my favorite. Dude, I've watched a lot of good TV shows on Netflix, but my favorite thing to watch on the internet has to be See Where Joe Goes. Definitely a top 5 for sure. Like what kind of
Lord,
inspired that, or is it more
that's
just
a
off
big
of
thing
that?
to say.
I don't watch a lot of TV.
Yeah. So yeah, that's fair. Who needs that when you have Instagram
That's what
TV?
I mean.
Yeah, I think it really started from, I had developed somewhat of a skill. Nothing that I was doing editing wise was really complex at all. It was just like stringing together clips. But I think it was actually during those first 3, actually at that point when you had your trip, I actually didn't start the See Where Joe Goes till August of that year. Playing around with it and creating stuff for other people, right? Like you guys would have a trip, I would create a video, share it, but that was kind of like very specific to, the context was very important and specific to y'all. So when I started I kind of left Ecuador after my contract ended in 2018 and made a trip, and I headed south in Ecuador down the coast, and then ended up going and spending about 2.5 months in Peru. So kind of I knew I was going to go and spend 2.5 months traveling. And I wanted to have a way to capture what I was doing, but then also share. Really, if you go back to like the first one, it was like, it was for my mom back in the US. Like, I know she'll never go and do these, being able to see what I was up to.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that I think I have something like 80 or 90 videos out now. And so you can kind of look back on those first ones and, kind of see how my style changes and how it goes from, little pop-ups, like explaining things. Eventually I reached a point where I was too lazy to even edit those pop-ups. So when I was filming, just say, hey, this is what I'm doing, and give the context. Yeah. As cheesy as it sounds, like the vlog concept of people talking to a camera is actually a quite effective way to get attention. Like, people appreciate that sort of, not overly, right? I think too much, in moderation, but I think a certain amount is good for video content and sharing stories.
No, I agree. And that's something. How long do you think it took you to be comfortable speaking like that? Because like you seem pretty natural from the beginning, so I wasn't sure if you had done that a lot before, or is that just something you're like, who cares what people think, and you just hit record?
Yeah, I think a good mix of both. Like, it was a certain, like, I'm experienced. Here's the key, right? Like, and actually I should give it this like context too. Like, it is definitely weird to have a camera on your face, and like I would try my best in most situations to explain that, right? Because it can be a bit obtrusive, but in general, the way so I would whoever I was traveling with, or like, if I was in some place, I would normally give them that context and explain. They were good, fun talking, fun conversation piece too. But so there's that. But for me, most of the situations I was in were tourist situations, right, where everyone is like this, right? So instead of holding my camera in front of my face in front of the camera, right? So instead, it's just I'm able to experience it and not have to worry about that, and just click a button. I'll send you this clip of like recording what's going on and what you see. You can edit this in when it's like my kitchen. So it's nice to have that. And that was, I don't know, I preach that to people now, like, whether it's, a video camera like this, or a GoPro, or a 360 camera, or, I met a lot of folks who had different mediums of kind of capturing memories. Met a Norwegian girl who was every day would draw like a cartoon from her day. And it's like, one of those cartoons, we like jammed into a bus traveling in Peru. And it was super cool because she like took a picture of it and shared it with us. And it was like how she captured it. I had met folks who do like beautiful watercolors, writing a ton. I think that's a super important part of travel in general, to keep some sort of log notes. Because, now I guess we are, about 10 months into, quarantine and COVID times. And, having these memories to look back on, where it's like the raw footage, hundreds of gig, well, it's not hundreds, but like a lot of like footage. Actually, it probably is. It probably is hundreds of gigs, of like, the kind of curated videos that I edited and published. It definitely is nice to have in a situation like now to reflect on. So what's your go-to, like, how do you capture and remember your travels or things?
So I use, I've always wanted to splooge and get the spectacles, like splurge on them, sorry. And I don't know. I just haven't been able to do it quite yet. Probably next time. That'll probably be my next like video production thing that I get. But for me, it's all about storytelling. So I
Mm-hmm.
find whatever captures it best. So like I'll journal and use that to go back when I'm creating the video, so I can say what I did as as I'm putting clips together. But I have my G7X Mark II that I use, just it's like less, like smaller than my hand, flip up, and then I
Yep.
don't mind going like this. I did right after Ecuador, so that May, the same year in August, I left for 6 weeks and did across Europe with one of my best friends. And so
Mm.
I have, like you said, hundreds of gigs. So when you said that, I was like, yeah, it's literally of like Croatia, like Spain, France, Europe, like Amsterdam, Romania, Bosnia, like
Mm-hmm.
Serbia. I got all these places in these really weird remote or populated areas where you see a guy wearing this exact hat, like a graphic t-shirt, shorts, and running shoes outside of the Monte Carlo casino with his little $400 video camera up in the air, and everybody's hopping out of their
Mm-hmm.
Rolls Royces. I stopped kind of, that was actually, that exact moment was kind of where I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like who cares what they think? Like they're looking, I'm not
Yeah.
going to see them
Yeah.
again. They might not even speak English. Like, excuse me. So it's between that, and then I have a Canon M50 that I use for like podcasts, or that I use for shooting better photos and bigger scenes, and I have a wide angle lens
Yeah.
on that for photos. So it's all about, that's why I love media. Like I love the digital aspect of it. It's just probably, in my opinion, like the best means of telling a story. Just there's the video, the audio, and that's why I like doing like the
Mm-hmm.
video and audio podcasts. Like I can see your reactions instead of just hearing it. I can see it. I can experience what's
Mm-hmm.
going on in your body language to understand how you felt in that time, and then how you're kind of reflecting on
Mm-hmm.
it. So I think yeah, I use a couple cameras there, and then I try to piece it all together to make it look cool. And I'm getting better, but slow progress. But
Yeah.
it'll definitely be fun to see the next few years. But I had a trip last year I did for 2 weeks across Canada and back, but I don't have one this year that I want to do yet. I don't know what I want to do yet as a trip
Mm-hmm.
because with COVID, but we were
Yeah.
supposed to do South America. We were supposed to do Ecuador and Peru, but
Mm.
instead, because of COVID, we had to settle for a cross Canada road trip.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No,
but
it'll be interesting to see how tourism bounces back, and that is the lifeblood of a lot of economies down in Latin America and around the world, really, and how that will happen. So I'm bullish on it, but I hope everyone will now travel with a little more intentionality, just as far as the wellness of others around them, whether it's masking or like being let's being somewhat responsible and respectable, like
yeah,
respect
I think
and
that's it.
respect your surroundings, because yeah, I definitely, even when I was abroad, meeting folks or making connections with people, being from the States. And I'm not going to say America because you're from America, that everyone's from the States, but
Yeah.
and traveling in America, Latin America for the time, people have preconceived notions about things, and a lot of things could ring pretty true. Like as
Mm-hmm.
much as like stereotypes are bad, and like, but some things ring true.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to establish whether it was my ability to speak Spanish and really connect with people and communicate, like that was always a bright spot for me when I would be places. And yes, I'm very tall, pale, and blonde, and it's not going to stop me from talking to people in a respectful way, and making connections, and getting to know folks. At the end of the day, folks really appreciated that, and it was nice
Oh
to be
yeah.
able to hopefully give a good representation of my country. And yeah, but
Yeah. And ultimately,
that's
like I
cool.
found ultimately yourself too. That was a big thing that I found with all the traveling I've done so far. It's like now I'm representing, in that situation, I'm representing my school, the group of people. It looks bad on you if I do something completely out of line. There's a lot more people down the chain, but if it's like now I'm
A lot
representing
of paperwork.
myself. Yeah. Oh yeah, I can't even imagine out there.
Yeah.
And so stuff like that, I think, is something that I think, like you said, it's just the respect thing. And I found people are really good in other countries. Like Ecuador is really good for it. When we were in Quito and I was trying to speak Spanish, or when I went to Spain and I was speaking Spanish and ordering by myself, ordering for me and my buddy who I was with, and like a group of people we were with for the hostel. And I was like trying to speak Spanish. I would tell them, don't speak to me in English. Just speak slow in Spanish and I'll do what I can.
Yeah.
Because
Make
I'm like,
best.
yeah, exactly. Right. And I'm like, I'm trying to learn because I'm like, I have learned a bit, scratch the surface at best. And now I want to like try to keep it going. But then, and I was learning until COVID hit. Then I was like, my English is good enough for Canada to go across the country. So,
Yeah.
but
Make do.
yeah, exactly. But Joe, what is, how important is your opinion, in your opinion, is travel to the development of a person? In your opinion?
Yeah. Hmm.
This
Fair
topic comes up a
question.
lot with a lot of guests of mine, and I find I'm like, you're the person I want to ask this most.
Yeah. I think for one, it comes from a point of privilege for sure, right? From to start from there, where um, there are folks, whether they're in Canada, the US, that have never even traveled outside of like their region, or so I think it's defining what travel means first, right? So for um, you know, if for me, I would define travel outside of a vacation, right? Like I think vacation is a vacation is a vacation, right? You want to go someplace warm and tropical. Like when I say travel, and I think for me, travel is um, just trying to find a place where you, hmm, it's not trying to find it. It's just going, right? You never know what you're going to get, right? But like
Mhm.
um, taking, taking steps to make the most of it, right? So I think as far as someone developing, like the step of even saying you want to travel, like that's a big step, right? Like I think like that's, and that's something that stretches a lot of people. And whether it's going abroad or taking for 2 weeks or a month or a year, I think for travel specifically, I think it's important that you approach it the right way. I don't know. Like I just, it's such a point of privilege for me and others, like to be able to go. Like that it's kind of, I don't want to say it's like required because it's such a privilege to be able to go, but it's more so that if you have the opportunity to go, you make the most of it. Right.
Mhm.
I think that's something for me that I not struggle with, but I reflect on a lot was, my opportunity to go and live abroad for 2 years and have this
Yeah.
opportunity. Like folks coming back to Charlotte and living here, it's always good to, it's nice to connect with folks and try to explain it, but like, it's one of those things like you have to experience for yourself or, um, yeah. So bit of a long-winded answer, but I think travel is super important for people's development as far as if you have the privilege to go and do it right, right, and make
Mhm.
sure you have the right intentions and set the right expectations. Because without that, I think it is just a vacation or a holiday, right? Time. So yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I like that answer a lot. Do you find when you come back, and just hearing you talk about it made me think of the I felt after the 2 weeks we were gone, or I was gone, to Ecuador, I came back. I was like, I didn't know. I didn't think it was cultural shock, but I was very, very, I was almost depressed for like a couple days afterwards. I don't know if it was just the jet lag, which meh, it wasn't that long of a flight, right? 6, 7 hours
Hmm.
roughly.
Yeah.
And I just felt like it was just all of it was so up here. We were busy, 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 go, 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 go. And then it dropped
Hmm.
back to every day. And everybody's walking around with like zero idea of what's going on. It was bizarre. And that was
Yeah.
very, very, was tricky. I don't know if you've ever experienced something similar or know what that's kind of like or what it is, but
Yeah, for sure. I think there is such a thing as like a reverse culture shock where, it's a silly term kind of, but like,
mm-hmm.
uh, it is, I think you said it right. It's that you're doing so much and like, especially in a trip like what you went on where it is every minute is planned and really there always is something happening where it's when you come back and you're like, oh yeah, I need to like figure out what I'm gonna have for dinner tonight and like think through what I'm gonna do tomorrow, right? Where it's mentally, right, you're able to go from a place of kind of locked into the roller coaster and like go and like you go on the roller coaster, like, yes, you trust it, it's secure. You know, it's going to be like crazy. Your head's going to spin, you're going to scream. But once you get off, you kind of want to go again. Right. And it's like, no, a lot of times you have to wait in line. Right. Or like, I think, a roller coaster is maybe not the best analogy, but I think there is something to it of
sense
like,
with it,
roller coasters aren't for everyone, right? But also like when you come back, it does take you a moment to like stand, right? Like when you walk after it, right? Like the only other people who get what you do are the folks that are waiting in line, right? You like looking at them like, oh, like they're gonna know what's happening, and then the folks that were on the ride with you, right? So that's why I think it's so important and was preached during those trips that like the folks that are on the trip are the folks that understand what was there, what happened, right? And what the experience was. And that's been, I think for me, the biggest thing, like coming back, I came back in late 2019 and then settled back here in Charlotte, connecting. One, I still have a solid group of my friends that had either, done the experience or just understood. So I had a good base, which I think was a blessing. But then also just connecting with other folks that maybe not have a similar experience, but just have had different experiences, right? Like I think trading stories or like understanding, I think my favorite question to ask people is like the favorite place you've been, right? Because like, everyone's been different places, but like, and people aren't afforded the opportunities to go all sorts of crazy places, but everyone should at least have a favorite place, right? And I already talked about it, the Spanish school in Colombia. Yeah.
Of all time, everywhere. That's the one.
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome.
Whenever
I hear place, I think of like countries. So that's cool though. That like that was the experience for you. Wow.
Yeah. So I guess to wrap, like that experience of coming back, especially, I had come back during holidays for a week or two and like, but even then that's even more travel than I was doing. Like I went from the beach of Peru for a month teaching yoga to, a cross country trip flying around, visiting all my friends and like, oh my gosh, this is, get me back to the beach.
No kidding.
Yeah. So coming back, it was a bit of getting a job and figuring out, I have my condo here. So it was, I knew I'd be back here, but what was going to be next and what would define kind of what ended up being 2020 as a year.
Yeah. Wow. I'm glad that whole experience is something that I can look back on, you can look back on. And I'm super grateful for being able to, first of all, you being able to do this and being able to connect with you and stay connected. And I will definitely do a better job of doing that. And I've been reaching out to a few of them lately who I've been on the trip with, mainly just, with how everybody feels nowadays with COVID. I like crave that human connection and just the conversations I have with all of them. I love them all to death, like phenomenal people, every one of them. And with that, of all the places you've gone and all the experiences, your favorite ones, your least favorites, do you have like an overall, like what is the best or not best, but what was the biggest lesson or experience that taught you the most? Like what was the biggest lesson you learned so far through all your travels, your experiences, and then kind of coming back to where you are now?
I think the one word is like just intentionality. And I'll like draw two lines with it. Like one was just with my time. I kind of already talked about it, where it was learning Spanish, connecting, and kind of having cultural experiences, but getting to know people, and then kind of giving back in ways that made sense, volunteering or that. Yeah, that was my intention, and I kind of stuck with it. So no matter what the travel experience it was, I could use those three items to, decide. It's like, do I go spend, a month on the northern coast of Peru at a spot, taught Spanish classes, teaching yoga and helping her with her marketing? Like check, check, check. Yes, I'll go do it. Right. So, so that intentionality, I think, was the biggest learning as far as even on my travels, to have that framework and guidelines. And in the same way, I haven't taught in nearly a year and change, but like teaching yoga and doing, my yoga practice was very much about me. Like, the yoga practice at its core is about like sitting still and kind of introspective sitting, somewhat movement and breath. And that intentionality is, something that's taught throughout. So that was another element of like, being able to have my own practice, but then share it with others was huge. And from that, coming back stateside, trying to find a job, I was blessed to have the opportunity to really connect with a lot of the folks in my network from where I used to work and in the Charlotte area, and could be really intentional about the work that I was going to do. And I'm working for a startup now that, nice. The quick pitch is working to allow a subset of workers, so warehouse manufacturing workers that really historically have been treated pretty poorly, as far as, you hear the stories of something like an Amazon or other warehouses, but, and allowing them to pick their own schedules and have their own flexibility. There's other things about that, nothing's perfect, but I kind of like that mission, or that concept where empower folks. So it's been fulfilling now to keep that intentionality. Challenging at times, like I think for everyone, 2020 and even to today with the pandemic has been tough, but I feel like it's been a it's tough to say, but like I felt it's been okay for me. Like I can't like, and I feel bad for saying that almost, but like I feel like I should feel, but like
you shouldn't. Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah. But in I'm still trying to be involved and give back, but it's still tough. But yeah, so intentionality, that's kind of the biggest takeaway that I'm still trying to keep to a certain extent.
That's amazing. Wow. Man, I'm so jealous you got to learn Spanish for a month and study it in Colombia. Sorry. Yeah. Wow.
You can go, man, there. It's actually kind of cool because they themselves, obviously with COVID, got hit pretty hard and kind of pivoted to online, and they kind of were pretty quiet for a couple months though. And like we're still teaching some, but they're called, I'll shout them out. Like they're called Spanish Adventure. And they just in the last 2 weeks, pretty much kind of started back up. Like they moved to a house in the countryside, like kind of like 5 minutes out of this town center where they were at before, and kind of starting back and where they were at in 2016, and they have like 2 volunteers that are there right now, and kind of are bullish that in the next 12 months, they'll be able to have students from internationally come and learn and experience. So
that's amazing.
That's why I'll always go and support them and want to go back and experience that, because it is
no kidding
a place that I hold near and dear to me, but also just people that are amazing and awesome. So
that's incredible. Wow. Yeah. Shout out to them. Definitely gonna check that out. That's always been a language that, well, ever since Ecuador, and then I just want to learn Spanish. I think I have a good enough base of French, good enough base of English. I could figure it out. Probably, hopefully the learning curve is steep. But Yeah, it should be fun. So Joe, brother, I really appreciate you being able to do this, man. I'm super grateful that we were able to reconnect and for everything you've taught me. And you, of all the incredible mentors, leaders, people in a facilitator role that I've come across with, for somebody who's been in that role in my life for such a short amount of time, you have made a crazy big impact, more than you'll probably ever know. And I'm super grateful for it, man. So I really appreciate your time and you being able to do this.
Yeah, man, absolutely. It's exciting to see you do what you're doing, and have me back on once you're at 100 episodes, man. Like it's you're halfway there. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing.
anytime, Glenn.
Awesome. I appreciate that, man.